So we have on our panel today Stuart Ostrow, who's president of ShipMoney. So Stuart will introduce himself in a minute. We also have Fradi Faouzi, who's group director training at Columbia Shipmanagement. We also have Raal group creative director at Ocean Technologies Group. We have Henrik Jensen, managing director at Danica Maritime Services. We have Ioannou, managing director of MCTC, and we also have Charles Watkins, clinical psychologist, mental health support and solutions. So I'm going to ask the panelists now just to introduce themselves and talk just for a minute or two, just about their views on this whole issue of the seafarer, and from a training competency point of view, but also maybe with an element on, you know, what lessons have been learned from the situation we're in at the moment and what opportunities might exist. So I'm going to do it from left to right on my screen. So starting with Christian over the top left-hand side. Christian, over to you. 1 or 2 minutes, please, just to introduce yourself and talk. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Ioannou, Managing Director of MCTC. We are basically specializing in 2 areas, which is the catering management and catering training. As far as training is concerned, Sean, I think training always has been a challenge in the industry, regardless if it's been online training or onshore training, especially in a difficult time like now when we've got this pandemic somehow having ruined the entire world's processes. You may understand, you may appreciate that the convincing people to undergo a training, particularly during the difficult times, is even more difficult than before. You know, because the half of what we do is supplying food on board the vessel, and the other half of what we do is crew training. And when this whole pandemic started, let's say really the global restrictions, lockdowns happened in February, March, April, June, and nobody was discussing any kinds of trainings about the vessels. And I'm quite sure Charles will be elaborate on this later as well, on the psychological effect of what people are having on board the vessels. And sending an email on board and asking them to undergo a training at that particular time wasn't a good idea. That's why we took a step back as a company, and we let them know, of course, that we're there to support them and to help them whenever there is a need. And we continuously send them educational newsletters and stuff like that for them to feel that there's somebody there to support them. But obviously, with the same tempo and the consistency as before, we had to stop for a while. Then we needed to concentrate on making sure that the vessels will run with adequate amounts of provision. There was quite a large concern from our clients where none of us knew what's going to happen, and so port after port being restricted. So we had to focus on for the first couple of months in supplying the vessel with the adequate provisions. Now in the last 1 or 2 months, we see as well that more and more crew changes are taking place rather than in the last 6 months, where we see that new staff are coming on board. They've been at home for more than a year, and they need to be more eager in undergoing particular online training. As MCTC, we've always been doing this, Sean. In the past, you know, we've been doing online trainings even 5-6 years ago, and distance coaching programs while they're on board the vessels. But the restrictions which we have now are the onshore training. Onshore in the Philippines or anywhere else, we can't really have anybody undergoing the training. It's very limited as far as we're concerned. So quite a list of requests from our clients to undergo the trainings online while on board the vessels. Of course, you always have this debate between the crew and the ship operators. Should they be doing the trainings while they're on board the vessels, or should they be doing this while they're at home? We see that the trend has been changing in the last couple of months, and I'm quite convinced that in the next couple of years, it will change a lot, and we will be focusing much more on online trainings, virtual trainings, And we see the opportunities arising from it as well. I'll just give you a simple example, and then I will close it because I'm quite sure I extended my 2 minutes. One of the things we've been doing is briefing and debriefing the crew before they go on the ships and they're coming back. So they always had to travel for the whole day in the Philippines to go to a training center, sit with us for 2-3 hours, do a briefing, and then go back to home for another 3-4 hours travel. They all know how it's traveling in the Philippines. Now they can all do this online. So time is money, time is precious for everybody. And I think it's an opportunity for the industry to evolve and be able to provide a lot of small value services online rather than on the spots. That's basically from my end, Sean. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer to any questions moving forward. You need to unmute yourself, Sean. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you. If you can just get a little bit closer to your microphone next time. We just had a bit of in and out going on there, but that's fine. Thank you. Right, moving over to Raal, Raal Harris. There we go. Raal, just introduce yourself if you can, and then just give a little bit of your own perception, your own insight into this whole issue then facing seafarers today. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Sean, and thank you for having me here today. So I'm Raal Harris, Group Creative Director for the Ocean Technologies Group, which is a new group, if you haven't come across us yet, formed of the brand that I come from, Videotel, along with Seagull, Marlins, and Maritime Training Services, all the training brands, and as well as technology brands as well, within their COEX and Terra Marine. So I was with, before we formed the group, I was with Videotel for 15 years, so been seen it all really from the beginning with VHS cassettes right the way through to all the fantastic things such as virtual reality and stuff that's happening now. I think as far as the whole situation goes, I think we have to cast our minds back a little bit and say, you know, what were we, it was already pretty challenging. If you think about our big concerns for this year, were of course the 2020 sulfur cap, if you remember that. That was the thing that we thought we were going to be really worried about. And, you know, none of us could have foreseen the disruption that we've witnessed. And I think, you know, all of us here on the panel would you know, pay tribute to the seafarers and how they've withstood these incredible situations, the length of time Christian alluded to, and all of the challenges that's had to their mental health, to fatigue levels, etc., which are all obviously impacting every aspect of their work, not just about how they train. And I think the thing that I think, yeah, we can dwell on the negatives, of course, we should look at those and appreciate those, but we also need to look at what's been going on. And I think there has also been some really good success stories that have come out of this, and we've seen some people really vindicated in their approaches. I think there's been from my perception, there's been a very stark difference between companies that are forward-looking, early adopters of technology. Captain Faouzi is one of those who have done very well out of this pandemic in terms of being able to kind of keep the wheels going on their training and on their competency, and then others who found themselves much more exposed, who perhaps have kind of been more content in the past to go with what they're used to and not try some of these new things, which has left them a bit flat-footed as we've had to go into new measures. So I think if we're to look at this from a positive point of view, and what COVID and all of that disruption has given us a bit of an opportunity for a reset moment, not just in maritime, not just in maritime training, but I think in every aspect of our lives. And whether we take that opportunity or not is really going to be the interesting thing, because I think one of the things that I always say to people, you know, I've been an evangelist for technology and training for a long time, is because I think if we were to look at training and competency building and all these kind of learning experiences, would it be as it was if we'd have started from a position of having all of the technology and all of the opportunities that brings with it? And I think the answer is firmly no. You know, we would not have a thing where the person stood at the front of the class talking to a bunch of people who are staying silent most of the time and maybe asking the odd question. And I think that this is one of the things that I perceive as being a bit of a problem at the moment, is people have found a very quick technological device, the one that we're using now, and said, well, great, well, we're just going to, that's the new classroom, and you know, and that's going to do us just fine. And I think that's missing an opportunity, because just as we've all been complaining before this started, that we all miss being together and sharing ideas together physically, the same is true of a classroom. Now, that might surprise people, because I've also been an evangelist and pioneered things like virtual classroom, which is going to be important and will continue to be important. But I think the mistake that we mustn't make is just to sort of say, right, there's the technology, that's the solution, carry on doing what we were doing. We have to rethink, we have to relearn, we have to use the technology well and break learning down into things that make sense. So that's kind of my pitch, really. That we, and the only other point I wanted to make, and which I'm sure we'll all talk around, is the fact that I think we've also seen through this crisis, and it was already coming with Seafarer mental health and well-being initiative, but this crisis is showing us more than ever that we have to look at the human being in the round. And that's why I think it's great that you've raised things like that, like sort of, you know, if we look across the board and all the people that are present here, you know, you've got how people manage their money, how people, nutrition, all those kind of things are just as important as some of the more traditional things that we'd look at as well, because now we're asking people to be able to work and learn and improve in extraordinary situations.
Thank you, Raal. That's excellent. That's good starter for Ted, I think, when we start the debate there. I'm going to move on to Charles now. Charles, we've already heard from the two panelists already about the importance of mental health issues. Do you want to just put your perspective on it? You know, I think when you've got a seafarer element, you know, that you need to be motivated, you need to be in a position to learn and to take new responsibilities moving forward. But a lot of that is going to depend on the mental health situation. So if I unmute you, if you'd like to, maybe actually you might be able to, if you unmute yourself. Thank you, Charles. Over to you.
Yeah, can you hear me well? Okay, great. Yes, welcome everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Charles Watkins. I'm from Mental Health Support Solutions, and I'm a clinical psychologist and psychotherapist, and I am managing director of MHSS. So yeah, so when it comes to this pandemic, we saw a lot of people struggling, right? We saw heightened cases in anxiety. We saw a lot of worry. Just no one was expecting that type of response, and that it happened so quickly. So we had a lot of challenges, actually. We had a lot of conversations with the crew and with captains and officers on how to deal with this mental health issues on board. It comes from mild depressions to worrying about family at home to heightened cases of anxiety, and certainly, of course, sleep deprivations, problems with fatigue, trouble concentrating at work. So we saw it all. It was a lot to take in, and we were handling it day by day. But training certainly is difficult for a crew. We found out it's not possible to just start training in the middle of a pandemic when they're on board. It's just difficult to reach them, and you know, it's hard to implement that type of training strategies that will usually take hours to do. So what we found out was some of the lessons we learned were it was very helpful to do very short videos, about 3 to 5 minutes. We sent them to the ships. Everyone on board watched them, and they were able to give us feedback. So we had a couple general topics in the beginning, things we were struggling with, and then we got feedback and were able to tell, hey, so what is it exactly that they need? What do they want to hear more about? What are the lessons that we learned from the feedback, and how can we integrate that feedback into the new videos, which really helped them. It's a very short way of just helping them use 5 minutes in the day to just look at the mental health topic in general, to see what's going on, and to get good tips from us, like exercise they can use, things they can apply on board, things they can use to stabilize themselves, and also what is mental hygiene and how to practice that every day to stay resilient in a crisis like this. So those were one of the opportunities, I guess, the lessons we learned, which really worked well. And we got some really good feedback from those videos. And it's, I guess, an alternative to the classical training model. It was something that we did in the moment, which made sense to us, and so that worked very well. And then we also found out that the crew superintendents that were dealing with crew matters, they were struggling too, and they wanted us to give them training in terms of resilience, communication, and crisis communication, which was a great idea because on the one side, we were able to get a lot of information from them, apart from the information we had from the seafarers, of what are a lot of the problems they are seeing, what are the problems that seafarers are facing, what are the problems they are facing. And we were able to come together, develop a seminar or webinars, depending on what was possible, and train them on different aspects of communication, recognizing crew members at risk, and because they have the most communication, most frequent communication with the ships. So this made a lot of sense to us. We implemented that training, and that went really well too. Again, we are very much a fan of the holistic approach. So it's eat, move, sleep, and positive relations, right? During the crisis, we were talking with MCTC about what's nutritional value of certain things, what type of foods reduce stress and help them stay resilient on board. So I think another lesson we learned is that coming together and looking at the whole, physical activity, diet, psychological well-being, mental health is just one part of something that we find is very important, that people come together in these times and talk to each other, that we increase our communication, and we look at how can we handle this as a team and go together like that. So that's something that we did too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, let me bring in the other panelists, and then we'll sort of develop some of the angles there that you're talking about, Charles. Bringing in Henrik now, if you can just unmute yourself, Henrik. I mean, you're a crew manager. You're looking after the large numbers of seafarers, you know, in this current situation. How's it been for you as far as looking at the training and the competency side and the motivation side as well? Talk to me about that. If you can just also introduce yourself, that'd be good.
Yeah, of course. I'm from Danica, and we are crew managers. So we have about 1,400 crew deployed, and we are also manning agencies. So we are experts in Eastern European crew. We have a few Filipinos, but otherwise it's East European, and it's mainly senior officers. We had, of course, when all this happened, I think it really started in February with the first problems, minor problems maybe at that time in China and so on. And then it developed, and I can say normally we do between 400 and 500 crew changes per month, yeah. And in April we did 3, so that says a little bit about the things are. But since then, since midsummer here, the things have improved, at least for the East European crew we have, because they can travel relatively freely. But still there is a number of crew, and it is a problem, of course. From the training point of view, I mean, yeah, that's stopped, of course, because we could not bring. We do training. We do some standard courses, and then we do a lot of company-specific training for our clients. So they are basically, we have training captains in our offices, and they bring the crew to our offices in Odessa and St. Petersburg. And then we do the classroom training or briefings or whatever, or training in plant maintenance systems or whatever we have. We did this before, yeah. And that, of course, stopped immediately when the countries were in lockdown. And still it's not picked up because we cannot bring so many people. The risk to bring so many people to the office is not good. And that went on to Skype. So we went quite, as crew has to join again, we came to do the Skype. In fact, crew are happy with this. I mean, this is a not very advanced online training, of course. Skype, that the instructor have the 5 crew members who should join together on Skype. But the crew is actually happy with this. That's another aspect maybe from this online training, that the crew do not have to travel to attend training courses. Yeah, and some companies have quite extensive training, which is good. But the crew has to spend 1 week vacation sitting in a hotel in another city to go to a training. Yeah, during the vacation time, and they are not happy about this. But now they can do 4 to 5 hours on Skype per day, and actually it is maybe better, and maybe they're more motivated also for this. So that's where we stand now. And then of course we're also looking into, and we moved also to offer online courses together with another provider, and that's also developing. But how I see the future here, it's difficult to say. I think one thing is there are two things which happened also, at least for the East Europeans. The employment markets have completely changed because of this year. First, we had a long pool of crew who could not go on board. And what happened then is that as Filipinos and Chinese crew and Indian crew cannot travel, many owners turn to the Ukrainian or to the Russian or the East European employment markets. And today there's enough job for them, for these seafarers there. So, and some of even people who have been long time, or crew who has been long time with the same owners, but because of these complicated crew changes and they cannot join and so on, they take other employment opportunities, and the retention is dropped. It's very low, and that of course is another thing will affect the training, because there will be a lot of changes, a lot of new crew joining, and they need to be trained in the owner's procedures and so on. That's one thing we see. And then also maybe I think when we had crisis before, and the owners have to cost, because the crew changes is now a lot more expensive here. There are fewer of them, but they are more expensive, and the flights, and airfares are extremely expensive here. And that's not going to come back for a long time. I think 2023 or something, some airlines are thinking about before they have their networks again. And when owners have to have higher cost on the travel, I'm maybe thinking, will this cut the training budget then, yeah? Or what will happen there actually? So that's things I think is something which can threaten training. I mean, when we had the bigger crisis in shipping before, I think maybe Raal and the training providers can say then it's the training budget is cut fast. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Henrik. Thank you. That's an interesting point there about the expense side. I think we'll maybe come on to that. I mean, Stuart, you know, the industry is really embracing digitalization at the moment. We can see this, but what are your sort of views on this? I mean, we've been looking at a number of different elements here that are contributing to the overall well-being of the seafarer. So he is in a position to react, to be trained, to be a better seafarer. What is your position on all of that? You know, you are dealing with crews all the time, and you're dealing with owners and managers. Give me your perspective.
Fellow panelists. My name is Stuart Ostrow, and I'm the president of ShipMoney. For those of you that don't know, our company provides a range of solutions for the commercial industry and the cruise industry as an alternative way for them to pay their crew members than they have traditionally. So to some extent, we are peripherally on the side of this crew training and competency topic, although I do equate quite often that wages and salaries are directly tied to mental health. All of us on this webinar get comfort knowing that we get a paycheck and that it's secure and we can essentially pay for the things that we need. And so there is a direct correlation between mental health and anxiety and assurance that crew members are going to get their pay, and they're going to get their pay on time. Raal, you made a point about looking at this holistically, or looking at this in the round, I think was the terminology that you used. It's not just training, and this whole issue with regard to mental health involves all aspects. It involves food, it involves rest, it involves communication, and it involves compensation and assurance in terms of compensation. And we've actually been incredibly busy during this pandemic, and have added an enormous number of clients, very substantial clients actually. And one of the reasons why is for this very reason, companies are having difficulty paying their crew members. The entire world has gone home and is working from home, and it makes it that much more difficult. So we are seeing a large increase in interest and new clients for these companies to at least address this singular point in terms of taking care of their crew members. You know, we talk about training, and all of us, in some respect, we all communicate with our crew members. We have that challenge in our company as well, is we can't go and see clients. We can't go to their offices, and we can't go to see the seafarers. So how do we adapt? How do we adapt to that? And, you know, I think that some of these changes in this industry in terms of virtual training and whatnot are structural. They're never going to go back to what they used to be. Raal I laughed when you made a comment about the cassette tapes. For those of us that are old enough on this path to recognize what that really is. But the old saying about adapt or die, we as an industry absolutely have to at this, focusing 100% on the seafarers. It's one of the things that we stress in our company is that one phone call or that one inquiry with that one minor matter really matters to that individual. He's you know, on a ship, he's away from his family, he's just as nervous as we are, except he's away from them and he may not be in communication with them. So every one of these touch points with regard to crew members really matters. And you know, I think it falls upon all of us on this panel and in this greater market that we're in to recognize the critical importance of the seafarers.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I'm not on mute. And we'll develop some of those elements there as we go into the debate. I'd like now to bring in Fradi Faouzi to give us his comments. We're starting to get some questions in as well from the audience, which is good. Fradi, you know, you're Group Director of Training at Columbia Shipmanagement. I mean, what's your perspective on this? Because there's a lot of change that's going to be happening. I want to sort of draw on that with Raal a little bit later as well, about how this whole pandemic situation is changing the way that training is going to be staged. But what's your view on this? We can introduce yourself and then give us your perspective.
Yeah. Hi, Sean. Hi, everyone. Of course, I know most of the colleagues here. My name is Faouzi Fradi. I'm Group Director Training in Colombia. I've been in Colombia since 2012. I was sailing before as a captain for more than 7 years, and in total more than 14 years at sea. Of course, Sean, I mean, I heard all the team here, and definitely this is a completely disrupting situation and totally unexpected. But generally, most of the seafarers have experienced difficult situations in the past, and I mean, we all had extended contracts. We had issues when we had to stay a bit longer on board. The only different thing here is that this global uncertainty, and it's very hard for the seafarer to predict or understand when he or she can go home. And also, let's not forget about those who are at home and waiting desperately to join the ship and get their life back, and also get income for their families. So that's also, I heard a lot of sad stories. I mean, how these guys were also left for several months without a job. And I remember one captain, Sean, whom I spoke to, and he was 7 months at home before he joined the ship. And when he came on board, he found the guys who were actually stuck on board couldn't go home. And he told them, "Do you have any idea about lockdown? What's a lockdown?" And the guys, of course, they were on board during the lockdown, so they just think that once they go home, it's like, you know, like it was before, but it's a different world. It's a bit like in the movies, you know. This is how is life today. So back to the training subject, which is obviously a very interesting topic, because before coronavirus, before COVID-19, there were different voices calling for more e-learning, more online training. I was one of them, and the reason is that I've been sailing myself, and I know that seafarers sometimes are living very far from the manning agencies and from the training centers. And it's really every day for them is important to spend with their families, with their loved ones. And we should really minimize the number of face-to-face courses or hands-on training to the minimum necessary. some compliance trainings, in my opinion, they never needed to be in a classroom or face-to-face, and they could have been easily delivered in e-learning format 10 years ago, frankly speaking. So the industry has been a bit behind, and the COVID-19 has just pushed the industry to move. It had to move. I mean, many other industries had moved many, many years ahead of us. Now, what is the solution better than the other solution? No, of course. We need to decide, we need to think, what do we want to achieve? And what are our expectations from these trainings? Today, because we cannot send people to the training centers, they cannot go for this hands-on training. Of course, we are using so-called temporary solutions. These solutions are not here to stay. And once this COVID-19 is over, we're gonna bring people back to the training centers. We're gonna bring them to touch things with their hands, to go to the real simulators, and to do hands-on training and to practice, and of course to become better seafarers and to progress in their career, because that's the goal at the end. It's not only to perform for the company, but also to progress their own careers and to be promoted, of course, to have a better future, especially for officers, but also for some ratings as well. So that said, e-learning also has revealed some problems during this COVID-19, because the computer-based trainings alone, they have been there for many years already. Everybody knows about them. But what is new is the virtual classroom, like we are meeting now. There is not the same human touch, the same human feeling as we are sitting in the same room, right? So we don't have our coffees, we don't have our, water and stuff. And these virtual classrooms came with also so many tools and platforms where the trainers were not trained to use. I mean, I also talk to students, in the universities, very big universities. They have even worse problems, because we deliver vocational training. These guys, they do education, and it's much more complicated. So the instructors should become more familiar. We should, as company, we should really know what platform we need. It's not because we know that a platform became so famous that means that it's good for us. No, not necessarily. It might not be the best one for us. And we need to test and try and select the best platform for ourselves. And this is what we've done in Colombia. The course, which used to be 8 hours per day, it's not necessarily 8 hours again online. It might be done in 6 or 4, So you need to put a new team to discuss the curriculum and review the whole thing. The whole curriculum, the whole syllabus should be completely renewed. And of course, these are some of the ideas which maybe we can elaborate later. I'm sorry for taking too long.
No, that's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to bring that point in to develop, actually, because there's some very good aspects there, and throw it open to the panel, really. How agile is shipping to sort of cope with the changing demands now? We talk about a need for online. We've had a question come in that says, what is the future of online training for seafarers? Basic computer-based training, does it have a value? And most companies just using it because of requirement for TMSA. But, is shipping agile enough to do that? Raal, let me bring you in first, and then please, to the panelists, just jump in. Give me your views as well. Raal.
On expressly that point, or to follow on from?
To follow on from that point, and also what Faouzi was saying as well.
I mean, I think both. I think Faouzi kind of hit upon a point which is that I myself make often, where this is about the quality of the training, and it's not about the technology. And the technology is just a tool, fundamentally. And that rethink about what's really working and learner-centered design is really what makes the difference. And to the question that's come up, what is the future of training and the tick box exercise? I mean, people were talking about tick box exercise training 15 years ago when I started at VideoTel, and I think it's a point that stands. You can throw anything, just putting something online and saying, well, there's our training, it isn't going to get you anywhere. Just because it's online is no better or more virtuous than it being anywhere else. It's about the quality of that training. But I think the important thing to note, and what's exciting about what's happening, is the way in which technology is making it possible for us to explore options and to do things differently. And I was chatting to one of our clients BSM, and they were telling me that they're now able to run their gas courses and gas simulators, online now, which gives you an entirely different possibility from having to turn up and be in front of a computer in a training center. And to Faouzi's point, that's all of that potential, not only the cost savings of getting to, not having hotels and flying people, but it's that real human cost of being separated from your families. But of course that, but it is no guarantee of quality. And that's the thing about kind of really fixating in on the objectives of what it is that the learning is there to achieve, and then thinking about how best to achieve it. And I think when you start moving to an e-learning paradigm, or an online paradigm, whatever you want to call it, you've got to start thinking about how the whole thing works together. How are you going to motivate people? And I see massive differences we've obviously got a huge customer base as a combined group now. And we see huge differences between those who kind of sort of provide, here's the lump of training, be it online or anywhere else, to those who are kind of thinking about the training being the e-learning piece being part of a whole kind of hearts and minds exercise of how you motivate people to want to do that training, to understand why it's relevant to them, etc. And that, I think, is the key, is working out what's that whole learner experience like, and breaking it down so that you can say, well, this bit is perfectly good to do online, and this bit we need to get together. And I was a bit down on virtual classrooms earlier. My problem with the virtual classroom is exactly the one that Faouzi posed, which is that if people don't understand how to use it, if they just use it in the same way that they would in a classroom, it's not going to work. You need to break it down. You need to work with the curriculum. You need to break it into chunks, work out what's going to be asynchronous, what you're going to do on your own time, and what you're going to do when you're together, and really kind of getting the most value, the bang for your buck.
Who wants to come in? Anybody else? Henrik or Stuart, do you have a comment? You need to unmute you, Stuart, just a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. This is actually a question for Raal and everybody else. Given the challenges from a technology standpoint, what about from a content standpoint? So before, one of my biggest questions here is actually recruiting. I think that the industry is going to have a real problem in the future in terms of trying to convince young seafarers to get on a ship. They're going to be hesitant, knowing the uncertainty in terms of I get on the ship and I may be stuck on it for a long, long time. And so I really wonder how the industry in the future is going to adapt to the concern from a recruiting standpoint, and to what extent do we need to retrain individuals? Obviously there's a lot of concern out there as the ships, some crew members get, the numbers keep increasing in terms of crew members past contracts, and some of the ships reaching, crew members just laying down their arms and going, listen, I'm tired. I'm just going in my cabin. I'm going to go sleep. And what some of these ships, if they're going to be laid up from a minimum staffing standpoint. So the question from a training standpoint is, does the industry adapt to the needs of seafarers from a training standpoint? And what do we do from a recruiting standpoint in the long term? How do we convince individuals to get back on ships?
Okay, let me bring Henrik in on that. Henrik, have you got, and then Christian as well after Henrik. So Henrik, you first, then Christian.
Yeah, I think the recruitment will not be it's a problem for the moment this year, but hopefully the COVID crisis will go away again in a year or whatever, right? So I think and getting young people in, I think this is not, but of course we have to offer a modern platform also to get the training and to get the people to get it attractive to go on board. But I think what Fradi said about the platform, the what to use, yeah. So things like what I call compliance training, yeah. This was already done on CPTs, and of course this can also be done on online. But when we come to more personal courses like leadership courses, yeah, I have problems. I deliver myself leadership courses, right? And one part of this is that you have the 5-6 people in a room, and there start some interactions, yeah. And that you cannot. I have not seen. I not looked into it also, but I don't think there's an online platform. All of them are like we are sitting looking at us now, if I want to have some eye contact with Christian, I cannot get it really, right? Or just exchange something. So that when you come to these leadership training courses or something else, it is difficult to do online. It's not possible, I think, efficiently. And I'm afraid of that one thing also here. So because I call it always compliance training. Yeah, this is good. I mean, 90% of the training we do, unfortunately, is compliance training. Yeah, so when we train compliance, we get people who comply, but actually what we need is people who can think, yeah, on board. And for that we need the leadership training. And I think maybe this will be a little bit blurred out in all this because there's no platform to do it. Another thing is that I'm just thinking here now when it gets so easy to do training. I mean, if you go maybe 15 years back, then when something happened some places, the answer was let us make a new circular, let us make a new ISM procedure. And if you go the last maybe 5-10 years, the answer to things which goes bad on board is let's do some more training. And I think that's a dangerous path also here when it's now become easier for somebody to say we close a non-conformity by buying a small online training course from Raal for small money. Then suddenly, because it becomes easier to do the training, we have a huge quantity of training, but where's the quality and where's the efficiency of all this in the future? That's a risk of.
All right, let me bring in Christian.
The easy things of it, yeah.
Christian, give me your thoughts on.
So, to refer to Stuart's comment, question there, basically, I think we as human beings, we're getting into a mode, an insecure mode when we are under challenge, and we believe that we will never get out of this challenge. And I think Faouzi mentioned it very well, that this is not a permanent situation, and we will go back to not to its original full form, but hopefully it will only help us to improve ourselves in our processes by not wasting 6 hours to go to a meeting or having a crew member coming by for a second, or we us traveling to the USA to do a one-hour seminar and paying $5,000 for it. I think the good things of it, we need to adopt them moving forward, use them in our future. Recruiting, I think the challenge with extensive crew changes and extensive contracts will eventually be out of the picture. It will go back to its normal. If we see Henrik and Faouzi from the management, they can correct me if I'm wrong. But if you look into the past, contracts in the past used to be much longer than the contracts now with MLC and so on and so forth. It used to be 10 months when I used to do 10 years ago. Now they're 6 to 8 months. Of course, it's a temporary issue which we will get over. Just to finalize my thought, I mentioned something what Charles said at the very beginning, and he said a word. We can hear somebody typing. Somebody can.
Okay, just a second. I'll mute
Stuart.
Yeah, Christian, do you want to start again? You just said your last point there because we could hardly hear you.
What Charles mentioned before was a nice saying, and he actually said coming together. And I believe now on both the vessels, as far as our industry is concerned and our concept of food, if the only time they have on board the vessel to sit together and support each other and chat with each other are these 20 or 30 minutes they have during lunchtime and dinner. Then everybody is isolating themselves even further into the cabins with social media, internet, and so on and so forth. I'm quite sure Charles has a lot of experiences to share in this respect. But I think we need to go back to training, and we all know that the results of training are not instant. We have to wait a little bit until we receive the fruits of the labor. And then hopefully, let's say in our area, food will become better. People will want to sit longer with each other during lunchtime. They will want to chat with each other, and then they will solve the issues they have with each other, socializing as human beings are supposed to be. And that's basically it from my end, Sean.
All right, lovely. Charles, let me bring you in.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I think that's a very extremely important point. So coming together, how do we do that? The one thing that struck me was quality and efficiency and quality of training. How do we assure that? For me, it's certainly to seek to first understand. So what are the main issues they are facing? I've talked to many seafarers, and what we do is we have the 24/7 helpline, and we do the trainings. We try to prevent things from happening, and we train captains and officers. And the feedback that we get is super valuable, because when it comes to quality, what I want to make sure is that we're not just supplying a general idea of mental health, resilience, cross communication, but also very much what is it that they need on board? What are the things that we've learned? What are they really struggling with? And how can we adopt that? How can we use that in terms of quality to train them better and to prepare them better for these things that might happen again? So it's very much that. So it's quality when it comes to that. It's how do we take the feedback and make sure that we really integrate the true struggles that they're facing, the real things they're going through, and assuring that really is of high quality in terms of what they need on board, and not just general theory. Yeah.
Thank you, Charles. And I think that's this whole issue about whether you're going to be able to attract the seafarer of the future to a career at sea. And we just had one question come in here about so much job uncertainty within society. Could the time be right now for shipping to really push and promote shipping as an industry to attract in the young and the talented? But Raal, what are your sort of views on this? Because I think it's quite an emotive issue here, isn't it? As far as understanding what that balance between the training modes and the training elements, but also making sure that the industry still and people still want to come into shipping as a career.
Well, I think we've seen, or at least I feel that in the last couple of years, there has been a move to kind of HR maturity in shipping. It was something that you never really saw. But there seems to be much more HR focus, particularly in the bigger clients that I talk to. And I think that's a really good thing, because I think that if we do, one of the problems that I see in shipping right now is that we've got a situation where there's almost like a group of the seafarers who are coming in, looking at it as an almost kind of hold your nose, do time and get out, and then do something different. And of course, what we want them to be in is a situation where they're looking at their career and able to build it, acquire skills. We all know that we're going to need a much higher caliber of candidate going forward as automation comes in and so on. And it's really that sophisticated decision making, troubleshooting, and all those skills that we're going to prize. But guess what? They're the skills that everybody wants, so we're going to be competing for the best candidates. And I think that moving to a situation where the companies are really focused, as I said, in the round, in developing people, making sure that we take advantage of automation as much as possible, so that the routine job, this is always going to be a very time limited situation working on ships. It's very cost conscious and so forth. So the more that we can engineer out problems by kind of putting in sort of automation to ensure that we close the loop on things, I think is going to be a really important thing. And then developing really good skills, developing those skills, it being a place where people can really sort of come away with the sorts of jobs that they want to further their career, to do better for their families and so on. And of course, training is going to play a very big part in that, because we are moving into a situation where all of us are going to be in lifelong learning. So it's very important that we get people to a position. There's almost, the first thing I ever started on here, I saw Stephen Bond's name come up on there. He employed me 15 years ago into video talent. And we did something called the Leadership and Management course then. And the first module of that course was called Learning to Learn. And of course, we mustn't take for granted that everybody starts from a position of being able to kind of understand the learning process and approach it in the right way. And I think we need to do more of those kind of underpinning skills to get people started and get people in the right, working in the right way.
I mean, Stephen's put a couple of questions up here, and he, first of all, he's asking, can we use tech knowledge, as he calls it, to promote going to sea? Make it an exciting career to go to. But then also that very emotive issue of the sort of sea time for cadets, which is the big issue. They're using technology, simulation, virtual reality to actually help that along the way, and also to operate the vessels remotely. You know, we haven't even come on to autonomous ships yet. You know, I mean, who wants to have a Faouzi, do you want to have a little go at that question, that whole issue there?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before that question, I also wanted to make a small comment. Actually, the shipping industry today, as we all know, is much, much better than it was 20 years ago, right? So we know that things have changed and have changed a lot to the positive. I mean, MLC came in, but not only MLC, also ships are better. Ship managers are doing much better job these days. And look what came with COVID-19. I mean, with COVID-19, many companies took initiatives which we could never imagine in the past. Free internet, everybody, unlimited. Seafarers, they're talking to their wives, kids every day on Skype, WhatsApp, whatever, name it. Provision also has improved a lot. Mental health support, well-being, fitness on board. I mean, in Colombia, we are basically changing the fitness equipment and improving it, upgrading it on all the ships. So, you know, just try to help people. But are the ship owners or the ship managers the only parties who can change this problem that we have crew stuck on board? I don't think so. I think this is global. This is much bigger issue, and the governments, flag states, everybody's involved, IMO and so on. So everybody should work together. Now we see that there is a second wave coming. So we have to see how this is going to affect the crew who were long time on board or those who just joined. When it comes to technology, yes, you can make technology better, of course, better use of technology, and definitely simulators must be used. But also, let's think at STCW. I mean, if you think that cadet has to spend 12 months on board, I mean, the 12 months on board, that way maybe was the way how we thought at that time. But today, with so much technology for training, so much ideas, so many e-learning simulators and so on, and much better programs. 10 years ago, we didn't have something called competency management system, right? So these are new programs. The ship managers and the ship owners are actually much better in that as well today. So I personally think that the time which the cadet has to spend on board before getting their tickets can be reduced, honestly, and can be reduced a lot.
And Faouzi, I mean, you know, just to develop a point there, you mean, you know, is shipping attracting in the right sort of higher caliber of person into the industry? You know, maybe I'll bring on Henrik as well to answer this in a second. You know, this is a tremendous industry we're in. We love it. People who are in shipping love shipping. It's, you know, but it's all about making it attractive to the young and talented. I mean, as an industry, are we doing enough?
You're asking me, or?
No, let Faouzi go first, and then you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, I mean, I don't want to to name other industries, but if you want to be an aviator, if you want to be a military guy, there are many other industries which are special, right? Like our industry. So it's a special thing. Every kid knows what's a captain, right? So I want to be a captain, or I want to be an astronaut. And this is how kids will dream about our job. And we've seen after the Titanic movie, Sean, if you remember, how people, they don't want to go to the engine room because it was shown very dirty in the movie. So everybody wants to go to deck department. Yeah, of course, we've got, I mean, with IMEC, as I am also a member of the recruitment and training committee with IMEC, we've done a lot of nice videos about engineering job. Yeah, the industry can do a lot and has to do a lot. And but still, I think the captain thing and the ship is something very popular in our lives. Now, the choice for an 18-year-old kid to make the choice and say, I'm going to the Maritime Academy is something that perhaps we need to get closer to the high schools. Perhaps we need to promote our industry more in the high schools and tell these guys, these kids, what do we offer in return? I mean, of course, now I hope, like Henrik said, this COVID-19 issue will go by some time. but what else we offer to these kids, and why they should come to us, why they should come to our job. It's an exciting job, whether there is technology or not. And in the normal times, I mean, honestly, I don't know, I don't want to say too much, Sean, but believe me or not, every day I miss my job at sea. So this is, I quit almost 10 years, and every day I miss my job at sea. So that's maybe something I can say.
Brilliant. Henrik, let me bring you in just for a quick comment on that as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for the, depending on recruitment, I mean, as long as the main recruitment countries for seafaring is the Philippines, China, India, and Russia, Ukraine, when we talk about officers and so on. And as long as the seafarer jobs we are offering are a lot better what you can get else in these countries when you're young people, yeah, then there's no problem to find young people. We don't have it at the moment. If I have to compare with something else, when we come to now, I sit in Germany, and I have children in the end of the 10 grades and 8 grades and so on, yeah. And the big companies here in Germany, what they are doing to promote themselves in the schools, you know, Siemens are giving robots they can sit and build on and say, if you become an engineer in Siemens, then you will sit and play with this computers your whole life, yeah. And how these, and same the automobile industry here in Germany, how they are into the schools, giving computers, telling if you're, because they need engineers in the future. They understand they need engineers, yeah. And how they are promoting themselves there. We have no chances as a shipping in that. That's for these countries is gone, yeah. The only thing I fear is that one day when Siemens they say, Russia, Ukraine is also, or Philippines is also a place where we can have engineers, yeah, and they move in the same way there. Maybe we then have problems. But for the moment, I think recruitment from the main areas where we are recruiting for the maritime industry for the moment is not a problem.
Okay, thank you, Henrik. We've got a couple of minutes, probably 3 minutes or so. So just a last parting shot from all of you. If we were sitting here in a year's time, post-COVID, what would you be telling me about the situation as far as training, motivation, the seafarers' lot is concerned? What lessons would have been learned, and what do you hope the industry would be actually doing to improve the situation? Christian, give me your crystal ball in 30 seconds, please.
Well, that's a very good question, which I don't think any one of us really has the answer. But I think the whole situation will force the industry to digitalize itself as it should have been doing it 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I think it will become more effective, or should be more effective and efficient through technology, and for everyone not to lose and waste so much time rather than actually being productive by using technology moving forward. I think that's how I would hope and see things in a year's time. And I believe that we will continue as well with webinars online. We will continue with virtual classrooms. We will not substitute everything, but I think by choosing the right tools, like everybody said, we're heading into a good direction.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. And Stuart, let me get your crystal ball prediction.
Well, hopefully in a year's time, we are actually doing this in person instead of through this ridiculous virtual Zoom meetings. I miss all of you guys. You know, I think sometimes that it's unfortunate that it takes a crisis to change, and you know, sometimes you know, we have a tendency as human beings to forget. And somebody brought up the communications. One of the most amazing things is that you would ask these young seafarers, these young guys, to get on a ship, and yet they didn't have any ability to access the internet or communicate to their family members until they got to port. So I think one of the benefits, one of the positive outcomes that has come out of this, basically, is a recognition of the importance of that individual, that young guy who is on that ship, who made this decision to go to sea, and we need to take care of them. And one of them is finances, one of them is food, one of them is communications. So I don't think that is ever going to go back. I think that finally the industry recognized, hey, we need to make an investment to enable you know, our seafarers to be able to communicate with their families, and with regard to other initiatives. Colombia, Captain Faouzi, I saw recently that Colombia has made a huge announcement and commitment in terms of providing benefits to seafarers, real benefits, as you say, cradle to grave. And I actually sent a note to some of your folks over there to say, I hope that this really sets an example for the industry beyond just your company. So hopefully, you know, we look in the rearview mirror and we learn from this in terms of understanding, you know, those individuals that are out on ships.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. Raal, what are your thoughts?
Well, I probably, I'm not sure I've got enough time to kind of go into it, but I'll think of a few themes. I think one, I think that it will force people to be, I mean, at the moment, you can't underestimate how much the crew change thing is still causing sort of, you know, people's attention, and we're not, you know, not seeing this just yet, but I think we will see people are starting to unpick things, starting to ask questions, starting to look again much more open-minded and more receptive to the kinds of technologies that we make, for example. And I think that will also lead to a much better relationship. So even through this crisis, what I've found with a lot of clients is that we're working much more consultatively, much more sharing of problems, which is ultimately, from my point of view, the way to work, because we need to understand where the friction is for us to be able to remove it and to see if we can help. And that means looking at the whole picture. So whereas we're just working with people on their on-board training, for example, I'm now having a much better understanding of what goes on ashore. And so I think the relationship between vendors and clients needs to improve, and will. I think the other things that we'll see is much more collaboration. So the groups that I'm on, for example, the Intertanko Human Element Committee, you saw they were very able to move very, very quickly and collaboratively to share guidance, to share these things. And this is exactly the model that we need in these kind of extremist times. And I think that as people try and remodel things at scale and at pace, we will only get to do that if we share information and learn to work together. So I think that's another feature. And then the big one, I think, is going to be the pressure on the legislators. If you look at what's happened in training for many, many years, you know, when I started, you could see legislation coming from space. It was easy. It moved at a nice sort of pace. We could prepare the training long in advance of it coming into force. And now that just can't happen quickly enough. We need to be able to respond much more quickly, which has meant much more has happened at best practice level. But sooner or later, it's going to have to come to that compliance level and driven through. So I think you will see changes to a lot of things, like the way that flag approve and all those sorts of things. They're already much more receptive to doing things online. It's been a battle of mine for 10 years, and we're seeing them much more receptive, much more open-minded. So I think all of those are positive things that will happen.
Thank you, Raal. Thank you. Bring Charles in very quickly, then Henrik, and then Captain Faouzi.
Thanks. I think what Christian said was very true. So we're planting a seed, and we don't know how, we have to wait until we see, till that grows and grows strong. But I think what I would wish for is more connectivity, and that means face-to-face on board, that they feel a sense of connection through doing things together. Some of the captains said they would like to have more social time. They would like to introduce an offline time just so they can get together and talk face to face and get to know each other a bit better like they used to. I think there is a great value in that. If you look at the hierarchy of needs, and the love and belonging part is very much feeling connected, feeling that you're together, knowing who's in front of you, and, you know, communicating face to face. So I think I would wish for everyone that the industry works in a way that we are able to reestablish those social bonds on board and make them stronger. So that's what gives you the real resilience when we come together as human beings, and when we know each other and can express that openly, maybe with some offline time. Yeah.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Right, Henrik, very quickly, your crystal ball.
Yeah, I can say it's difficult to predict something, especially when it's about the future. Yeah. But I think I'm afraid if you look at other crises or things we had that's a normal thing. I think when the pressure goes a little bit off, everything goes back to as it is. Yeah, because all these things, quality and new platforms and all this development cost money. Yeah, and maybe I mean to develop new syllabuses and all this is not free. Somebody has to. I mean, at the end, only the ones who pay for the training has to pay for it. Yeah. And I think when all the pressure goes off and we are back again, then as long as it's cheaper to go in the training room, we don't think so much about the quality of the seafarers, but the time they spent, and that's the risk I see. Yeah. And I think so. But for sure, we have learned something. There has been a reset from this year. Yeah. And things are going to change, and some of these changes will stay forever. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And last but not least, Faouzi, what's your views on it?
Yeah, Sean, I will try also my crystal ball. So just quickly, very quickly, for me, we should remember that learning should never stop. We are here to learn, to train, and to become better. That should never stop, whatever happens. And the same what we will think for our kids as well when we send them to the school or whatever happens. The technology is here, let's use it. Let's know how to use it first, and let's think carefully what we are using it for. And the last thing is, let's take care of our people. Companies, I mean, if we cannot change the whole world, we cannot change this crisis, we cannot change the global pandemic, but we can change the life of our crew on board. We can make it better. So let's take care of our people. Let's communicate with them. Let's give them what we didn't give in the past, right? Or maybe what they deserve, actually. And this is why I'm very excited of what Columbia Shipmanagement is doing with regards to the crew benefits, you know, life insurance, disability insurance, investment, mental health support, good provision supply, good training solutions. All this stuff is what the companies can change now, and they have to do it. And that's great. So that's all from my side.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, folks, that was a good debate. We have run over by about 10 minutes, but I think it was worthwhile because there's some very good points raised there. I'd like to thank you all for your time today and for your wise comments and your contributions. As I said, the debate will be recorded and put on to the Shipmanagement International website, so you'll be able to get your teams to access it as well and have a listen to it as well, which is good. And it'll be covered in the magazine. But thank you very much, and thank you to all the delegates who've come in as well and for the questions. And may I wish you all a very, very good day ahead. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.